The morning of my grandfather's funeral, I found a brand new lock on his front door, and my brother standing there like he owned everything behind it. "Rosalie, you don't need to go inside," Marcus said, blocking the entrance. Grandpa didn't want that. Didn't want me. Since when? Why would he say that after trusting me with every financial detail for years? And why change the locks hours before the funeral? I tightened my grip on the envelope in my hand, the one Grandpa mailed me 3 days before he died, stamped urgent. Marcus's eyes flicked to it just for a second, and that was enough. Whatever he'd done inside that house, he was afraid of what I might already know. "If you're watching from somewhere outside the US, tell me where you are and what time it is for you right now." I read every comment, and if you've ever been told it's for the family while something was taken from you, you'll understand why I didn't walk away that morning. A month before my grandfather died, I was still the one he called whenever something didn't make sense on paper. "Rosalie, can you take a look at this statement?" He'd ask, his voice steady but careful, like he already knew something was off, but wanted me to confirm it. I worked as a financial analyst in Chicago. Numbers were my language. Patterns, discrepancies, timing, those things stood out to me, the way tone changes stand out in a conversation. And with Grandpa, there had always been a rhythm. His accounts were clean, conservative, predictable, until they weren't. The first time I noticed it, I was sitting at his kitchen table in Columbus, a stack of statements spread out between us. A transfer large out of character had gone out the week before. Not catastrophic, but not routine either. "Did you authorize this?" I asked. He adjusted his glasses and leaned in. Marcus said it was part of reorganizing things. Something about simplifying accounts. I didn't respond right away. Marcus had never shown interest in Grandpa's finances before. He worked in real estate, fast deals, fast money, always talking about leverage and opportunity. Grandpa was the opposite. He believed in slow growth, low risk, and control. "Did you sign anything?" I asked. Grandpa hesitated. "Not long, but long enough. A few documents," he said. "Marcus brought them over last week." I nodded, but something in my chest tightened. "Do you still have copies? They should be somewhere in the study." We went looking, but the folder Marcus had supposedly left behind wasn't where Grandpa thought it would be. He brushed it off, said he might have misplaced it, but I'd never known him to misplace anything important. That was the first moment something didn't sit right. A week later, he called me again, this time later than usual. "Rosalie," he said, quieter than before. "If anything ever feels rushed, don't go along with it. Take your time. Understand everything." I remember leaning back in my chair, frowning. "Is someone pressuring you?" "No," he said quickly. Too quickly, then softer. "Just be careful." He changed the subject after that. Asked about my job, my apartment, whether I was still working those long hours. It was the kind of pivot people make when they don't want to say more, but they want you to remember what they did say. The next time I visited, Marcus was already there. That alone wasn't strange. What was strange was how comfortable he looked sitting at Grandpa's desk, his laptop open, papers spread out like he belonged there. "Didn't know you were coming," he said when I walked in. "Same," I replied. Grandpa was in the living room watching television with the volume lower than usual. He smiled when he saw me, but it didn't reach his eyes the way it normally did. Marcus stood up and closed the laptop halfway. Not fully. Just enough to signal that whatever was on the screen wasn't for me. "We're just going over some things," he said, "trying to make everything easier." For who, I asked. For Grandpa, he answered a little too quickly. I stepped past him and sat down next to Grandpa. "You okay?" He nodded. "Your brother's helping organize some paperwork." I glanced at the desk again. There was a folder, thick-tabbed, official-looking, the kind banks used for account restructuring or beneficiary updates. One tab caught my eye. It had been crossed out with a pen. "What's that?" I asked. Marcus moved faster this time, picking up the folder and closing it. "Nothing you need to worry about." I held his gaze. "If it involves Grandpa's accounts, I do need to worry about it." "It's handled," he said. You don't have to micromanage everything, Rosalie. That word, micromanage, landed exactly the way he intended. Like I was overstepping. Like I didn't belong in a conversation I'd been part of for years. Grandpa shifted in his seat. "Let's not argue," he said gently. I let it go in that moment. Not because I agreed, but because pushing harder would have put him in the middle. And I could see it already, he didn't have the energy for conflict. Later that evening, after Marcus stepped out to take a call, Grandpa walked me to the hallway. "Come here," he said quietly. He reached into a small drawer near the coat closet and pulled out a key. Not a house key, smaller, heavier. "Keep this," he said, placing it in my hand. "What is it?" "Just something important. In case things get complicated." I frowned. "Complicated how?" He shook his head slightly. "I trust you to figure that out." I wanted to ask more. I should have asked more. But the way he looked at me steady, certain, made it feel like the answer wasn't something he could explain in one sentence. "Don't let anyone rush decisions after I'm gone," he added. "Promise me that." "I promise," I said. At the time, I thought he meant the usual things. Funeral arrangements, selling the house, dividing belongings. I didn't realize he was talking about something already in motion. 3 days later, he was gone. And the day after that, Marcus stopped returning my calls. The last thing I found before driving back to Columbus for the funeral was an email notification from Grandpa's bank. No message, just a subject line. "Account update confirmation." I clicked it. The file attached was locked. A week before my grandfather died, I walked into his house without knocking. That used to be normal. I had a key, and he'd always told me family doesn't need permission. But that afternoon, the air inside felt different, too quiet, too controlled. Voices came from the study. "We just need to finalize this," Marcus was saying. His tone was low, firm, not asking, directing. I stepped closer, stopping just before the doorway. "I don't like signing things I don't fully understand," Grandpa replied. His voice was steady, but there was hesitation under it. "You do understand," Marcus said quickly. "It's just updating beneficiaries, consolidating accounts. It'll make everything easier when the time comes." "When the time comes." He said it like it was a scheduled appointment. I leaned slightly, just enough to see inside. Marcus was standing over the desk, one hand resting on a stack of papers, the other holding a pen out toward Grandpa. The folder was open, thick, organized, professional, not something you throw together overnight. Grandpa sat in his chair, shoulders slightly hunched, reading the top page again. "Rosalie usually looks over this kind of thing," he said. Marcus didn't miss a beat. "Rosalie overcomplicates things. This is straightforward. You don't need a full audit every time you sign a document." I stepped into the doorway. "Then show me," I said. Marcus turned clearly, not expecting me. For a split second, something crossed his face. Annoyance. Maybe something sharper, but it was gone just as fast. "This isn't a good time," he said. "It never is, apparently," I replied, walking in. Grandpa looked relieved to see me, but he didn't say anything. That bothered me more than anything Marcus had done. I moved closer to the desk. If it's straightforward, it won't take long to explain. Marcus closed the folder halfway. "It's already handled." "That's not what it looks like." "It looks exactly like what it is," he snapped. "You don't need to be involved in everything." I ignored him and looked at Grandpa. "Did you ask him to help with this?" There was a pause. "He offered," Grandpa said carefully. That word "offered" carried weight. It meant the idea hadn't come from him. "Can I see the documents?" I asked. Marcus picked up the folder completely this time, pressing it flat against his chest. "No." The answer came too fast. "Why not?" "Because you're not the one handling this." I felt something shift then. Not just irritation, something colder, more focused. "Handling what exactly?" I asked. "Financial restructuring," he said. "Things you wouldn't understand without context." I let out a quiet breath. "I work in financial analysis, Marcus. Context is literally my job." Grandpa shifted again in his chair. His hand rested near the pen, but he hadn't picked it up. "Maybe we should all sit down and go through it together," I said, softer now. just to be sure. Marcus laughed under his breath. Or we could not turn this into a whole production. I didn't respond. I just watched him. People think tension is loud. It isn't. It's the silence right before someone decides whether to push or back down. Marcus broke it first. Look, he said, lowering his voice. This is about making sure everything stays in the family without complications. That's it. Without complications for who I asked. For everyone. That's not an answer. He tightened his grip on the folder. You always do this. Turn everything into a problem. And you avoid explaining anything I shot back. Grandpa cleared his throat. That's enough, he said quietly. We both stopped. I'll go over the documents again, he added. And we'll talk later. Marcus didn't argue, but he didn't look pleased either. He set the pen down on the desk a little harder than necessary and stepped back. Fine, he said, but we don't have time to drag this out. He walked past me without another word. I stayed where I was watching the door until I heard it close. Then I turned back to Grandpa. Something's off, I said. He didn't deny it. He just sighed and leaned back in his chair. Your brother thinks he's helping. That's not what this feels like. Another pause. He's been persistent, Grandpa admitted. How persistent? Grandpa didn't answer directly. Instead, he reached for the folder Marcus had left behind for a second too long. It was still there. I stepped forward and opened it before he could change his mind. Inside were account summaries, beneficiary forms, and a restructuring plan tied to multiple accounts. I recognized immediately retirement funds, investment accounts, even a smaller trust Grandpa had set aside years ago. But something was wrong. Names had been crossed out. Not randomly, intentionally. Clean lines through one beneficiary replaced with another. Marcus Gordon. Over and over again. Did you agree to this, I asked? Grandpa's eyes moved across the page slowly. He said it was temporary, just until things were simpler. That's not how this works, I said, keeping my voice even. These changes are legal once they're signed. They're not placeholders. He looked at me, then really looked. And for the first time, I saw uncertainty. I don't want conflict, he said quietly. I closed the folder. Avoiding conflict doesn't prevent it. It just delays it until it's worse. He didn't argue. I placed the folder back on the desk. Don't sign anything until I've reviewed all of it. Please. He nodded. I mean it, I added. No matter what Marcus says. Another nod. Slower this time. I trust you, he said. I believed him. That was the part that made everything harder later. Because 3 days after that conversation, Marcus showed up again. And this time, the folder wasn't on the desk. When I asked about it, Grandpa said it's been taken care of. And just before I left that day, I caught a glimpse of a single page on the printer tray. At the top in bold, beneficiary change confirmation. The name listed underneath wasn't mine anymore. The house felt too full in the days leading up to the funeral, and somehow I'd never felt more shut out of it. People moved in and out with casseroles, quiet voices, and that careful politeness people use when they don't want to ask the wrong question. But behind it all, there was a second layer, closed doors, lowered voices, decisions being made without me. Marcus was at the center of it. He's handling everything my mother Denise kept saying. Your grandfather trusted him. That wasn't true. Or at least it wasn't the whole truth. He trusted me too, I said once, standing in the kitchen while she folded napkins no one would use. She didn't look up. Marcus is just more assertive. We need that right now. Assertive. It was a softer word for what I'd been watching all week: control. Every time I tried to get clarity on anything, accounts, legal documents, even basic arrangements, I was redirected. Marcus has it. Marcus already took care of that. Just let him handle it. Even the study door stayed closed most of the time now. That had never happened before. Grandpa used to keep it open even when he wasn't inside. Now it felt like a boundary I wasn't allowed to cross. I knocked once. No answer. I tried the handle. Locked. Of course it was. Later that afternoon, I found Marcus in the living room going through a stack of papers like he was sorting inventory. We need to talk, I said. We're busy. he replied without looking up. We're always busy when I have questions. He sighed and set the papers down. What do you want, Rosalie? Clarity. You're not entitled to every detail. I'm not asking for everything. I'm asking for anything. He leaned back slightly, studying me like I was a problem to manage. Grandpa didn't want things to get complicated, he said. So I simplified them. That's not how consent works. It's how reality works, he shot back. Someone has to make decisions. Not alone, I said. And not in a way that cuts everyone else out. His jaw tightened. You're assuming a lot. Then prove me wrong. For a moment, I thought he might actually show me something. Instead, he stood up, gathered the papers, and walked past me. Everything's already been handled, he said over his shoulder. You're late. Late. Like this was a deadline I'd missed. Like the outcome was already locked in. That word stayed with me longer than it should have. Because if everything had already been handled, then why did it feel like something was still being hidden? That night, I went through the emails again. The notification from Grandpa's bank was still there. Account update confirmation. No sender name I recognized, just the bank's automated system. No message in the body, just an attachment. I clicked it again. Still locked. I forwarded it to Lena. Can you take a look at this? I wrote. It's from Grandpa's account. I think something's wrong. She responded almost immediately. Send me the file. I'll see what I can do. I hesitated before attaching it. Not because I didn't trust her, but because once I knew what was inside, I wouldn't be able to pretend I didn't. I sent it anyway. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. Rosalie Lena said the second I picked up. Where did you get this? From Grandpa's email. Why? There was a pause. It's encrypted, she said. Not standard protection. Someone added an extra layer. Can you open it? Eventually. But whoever locked this didn't want it opened easily. That didn't surprise me. What kind of document do you think it is? I asked. I can see the file structure, she said slowly. It's a financial confirmation. Looks like multiple transactions. Possibly account changes. My grip tightened on the phone. Can you prioritize it? I asked. I already am, she replied. Give me a few hours. When the call ended, I sat there staring at the dark screen. Multiple transactions, account changes, all happening right before Grandpa died. I thought about the folder Marcus had been holding, the crossed out names, the way Grandpa had hesitated. And then I thought about the key. I reached into my bag and pulled it out, turning it over in my hand. Small, solid, not labeled. Not a house key. I'd assumed it might be for a drawer or a cabinet or something inside the house. But now, I wasn't so sure. The next morning, the morning of the funeral, I drove back to the house earlier than anyone else. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I just needed to see it for myself. The driveway was empty. For a moment, I thought I might actually get inside without a scene. Then I saw the front door. New lock. Clean metal. No scratches. Recently installed. Marcus hadn't just taken control of the paperwork. He'd taken control of access. And when he stepped out from around the side of the house a few seconds later, like he'd been expecting me, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever was inside that house, he didn't want me anywhere near it. And somewhere in my bag, the phone buzzed again. A message from Lena. I got part of it open. You need to see this. Marcus didn't ask why I was early. He didn't need to. He saw it in my face the same way I saw it in his when his eyes flicked to my bag just for a second too long. You're not going in, he said, stepping between me and the door. I wasn't planning to use the front door, I replied. That threw him off for a moment. Just a moment, but it was enough. This isn't a game, Rosalie, he said, his voice tightening. We're hours away from the funeral. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I'm not the one who changed the locks. It's temporary. Temporary control is still control, I said, especially when no one else agreed to it. He exhaled slowly like he was trying to stay patient. I'm protecting what's left. From who? His eyes held mine. From mistakes. That word again. Vague, convenient. Behind him, the house looked the same as it always had, quiet, still familiar. But the way he stood there made it feel like something inside had shifted. You're not the only one who cared about him, I said. I'm the only one doing something about it. I let that sit for a second. Then I nodded like I was backing down. Fine, I said. Handle it. He blinked surprised. That's it, he asked. For now. I stepped back, turning slightly as if I were about to leave. But instead of walking to my car, I moved along the side of the house, out of his direct line of sight. I could feel his attention on me for a few seconds longer before it shifted. He had people arriving soon, a schedule to maintain, appearances to keep. That was his weakness. He needed control, but he also needed everything to look normal. I waited until I heard the front door open and close again, until voices started filling the entryway. Then I moved. The side path hadn't changed. Same uneven stones, same narrow strip of grass Grandpa used to complain about but never fixed. I passed the kitchen window and kept going toward the back. There it was, the side entrance. Grandpa rarely used it except when he didn't want to walk through the whole house. He'd once joked it was his shortcut to thinking. I pulled the key from my bag. For a second, I just held it there staring at the lock. This was the moment. If it didn't fit, then I was wrong about everything. If it did, then Marcus hadn't just locked me out. He'd tried to lock me away from something specific. I slid the key in. It turned. Not smoothly, there was resistance, like it hadn't been used in a while, but it turned. The door clicked open. I stepped inside and closed it quietly behind me. The kitchen looked untouched. Same coffee mug by the sink, same folded dish towel, same quiet stillness that hadn't yet accepted someone was gone. But as I moved further in, that feeling changed. The hallway leading to the study was partially closed off boxes stacked along one side like someone had started organizing but hadn't finished. Or like someone had moved things quickly. I pushed the study door open, unlocked. Of course it was. Marcus hadn't expected anyone to come in this way. The desk was clear. Too clear. No folders, no papers, no trace of the documents I'd seen just a week ago. But the absence itself was information. He'd removed everything. I walked around the desk scanning the room. Drawers empty. Cabinet empty. Even the small tray Grandpa used for incoming mail was gone. Marcus hadn't just taken the documents. He'd erased the process. My phone vibrated in my hand. Lena. I answered immediately, keeping my voice low. I'm inside. You need to listen carefully, she said. No greeting, no small talk. I only got partial access, but it's enough. What did you find? There were multiple transfers from your grandfather's accounts, she said. Not just one. Several. All within the same 3-day window. My chest tightened. To where? There was a pause. Accounts under Marcus's name. I closed my eyes for a second. How much? 6 figures total, she said. Split into smaller amounts to avoid triggering alerts. Of course he did. When did it start? I asked. The first transfer happened the same day those documents were likely signed, she said. The rest followed right after. I leaned against the edge of the desk, steadying myself. He didn't wait, I said quietly. Nolina replied. And there's more. I opened my eyes again. What? One of your grandfather's accounts was closed entirely, she said. Same week. Closed. Yes. And the funds were moved before it was shut down. Where? I don't have that part yet, she said. The file cuts off. I exhaled slowly. Send me everything you have, I said. I already did. Check your email. The call ended. For a moment, I just stood there in the empty study, holding my phone, listening to the faint noise of voices gathering at the front of the house. Marcus had taken the documents. He'd taken the money, and he'd locked the doors. But he hadn't taken everything. I pulled up the email Lena sent. Attachments, screenshots, transaction logs, dates, amounts. Evidence. Clean, traceable, real. And then I saw something else. A second email in my inbox, not from Lena. From the bank. New. Subject line, a safety deposit box, access reminder. I stared at it. Then I slowly reached into my bag and pulled out the key again. It wasn't for the house. And it definitely wasn't for a drawer. Knew you'd find your way in, a voice said behind me. I turned. Marcus stood in the doorway of the study, his expression calm, but his eyes locked on the key in my hand. You always did like digging, he said. This time I didn't hide it. Yeah, I replied. And you always underestimate what I'll find. Marcus didn't raise his voice. That was how I knew he was worried. Most people get louder when they're losing control. Marcus got quieter. You shouldn't be in here, he said, stepping into the study and closing the door behind him. You shouldn't have changed the locks, I replied. We stood there for a second. The distance between us filled with everything neither of us was saying. His eyes dropped to my phone. You've been busy, he said. So have you. He let out a short breath, almost like a laugh. If this is about money, you're overreacting. 6 figures in 3 days isn't an overreaction, I said evenly. That was the first crack. Small but real. His jaw tightened just enough to confirm it. You don't have the full picture, he said. Then explain it. It's called managing assets, he replied. Grandpa wasn't in a position to keep up with everything. I stepped in. By moving money into your own accounts, it's temporary. That word doesn't mean anything when it's undocumented. It is documented, he snapped. You just haven't seen it. I held his gaze. Then show me. Silence. That was answer enough. You already moved the documents, I said. You cleared the desk. You locked the house. You didn't even trust your own story to hold up if anyone looked too closely. His expression hardened. You think you're smarter than everyone else, he said. That because you work with numbers, you understand how the real world works. I understand how patterns work, I replied. And this one is obvious. He took a step closer. You weren't here, he said, his voice low now. You didn't see what things were like at the end. The confusion, the second guessing. Someone had to make decisions. So you made them for him. I made them for the family. There it was. The same justification, the same shield. For the family, I repeated. But the accounts are in your name. It's easier that way. For you, his eyes flashed. For everyone, once things settle. And who decides when they settle, I asked. You. He didn't answer. I glanced down at the key still in my hand, then back at him. This wasn't about convenience, I said quietly. You didn't want anyone to see what you were doing before it was done. That's not true. Then why the extra encryption on the bank file, I asked. Why split the transfers? Why close an account right after moving everything out of it? Another pause. Longer this time. He hadn't expected that. You've been digging deeper than you should, he said finally. And you've been hiding more than you should. We stared at each other, the tension no longer subtle. Give me the key, he said. No, that doesn't belong to you. It was given to me, for what he asked. I tilted my head slightly. That's what I'm about to find out. His eyes narrowed. You think there's something else, he asked. I think Grandpa knew exactly what he was doing when he gave me this, I said. And I think you're hoping I never figure it out. He took another step forward, closer now. Whatever you think you're about to uncover, he said it's not going to change the outcome. Maybe not for you, I replied. But it will for the truth. For a second, something shifted in his expression. Not anger, not confidence. Concern. You don't understand how this plays out, he said. Then help me understand. You push this. He continued ignoring my question, and it doesn't just hit me. It hits Mom. It hits the whole family. Everything unravels. That already happened, I said. You just did it quietly. He looked away for the first time. Just a flicker, but it was there. And that told me more than anything he'd said. This wasn't just strategy. It was fear. Rosalie, he said softer now, almost measured. We can fix this without making it public. Fix. Another word that sounded reasonable until you looked at what it actually meant. How I asked. I'll transfer the money back, he said. We'll rebalance everything. No one needs to know it got messy. And the documents I asked, I'll handle those too. Meaning, they'll reflect what's fair. I let out a quiet breath. Fair according to you. Fair according to reality, he corrected. I shook my head slightly. You're not offering to fix anything I said. You're offering to rewrite it. His patience snapped just a little. I'm offering you a way out, he said. Before this turns into something bigger than you can control. I held up the key. This is already bigger than you can control, I said. His eyes followed the movement, And for the first time, I saw it clearly. He didn't know what it unlocked. That meant one thing. He hadn't found everything. "I'm going to the bank," I said. His expression shifted again, quick, sharp. "You don't even know what that opens." "No," I said, "but I know you don't either." He stepped back just enough to block the doorway. "You're not leaving with that," he said. I didn't raise my voice. "Move. Rosalie." "Move," I repeated. Another pause. This one stretched longer than the others, because this time it wasn't about words. It was about who was going to give in. Finally, he stepped aside. Not because he agreed, because he knew he couldn't stop me without making a scene, and the house was already filling with people. I walked past him, keeping my pace steady, my grip tight on the key. As I reached the hallway, he spoke again. "If you open whatever that leads to," he said, his voice low behind me, "you're not going to like what you find." I didn't turn around. "I'm not doing this to like it," I replied. "I'm doing it to understand it." I stepped outside, the noise of arriving guests swelling around me. My phone buzzed again as I reached my car. Another message from Lena. "Rosalie, there's something else." That closed account, it wasn't emptied completely. I opened the message. Attached was a partial record. One remaining balance. Not transferred. Not touched. Just left there. And next to it, a note in the system. A link to external secured asset. I stared at it for a second. Then I looked down at the key in my hand. And suddenly, I wasn't just going to the bank for answers. I was going for something Marcus had completely missed. The bank was only 15 minutes away, but the drive felt longer. Not because of traffic, because of what I was trying not to assume. If I let myself jump to conclusions, I could miss something. And Marcus had already proven he was willing to move fast and quietly. That meant whatever Grandpa left behind, it wasn't obvious. It was intentional. I sat for a second and looked at the key again. Small, unmarked, heavy enough to matter. Linked to external secured asset. That wasn't language you used for a drawer or even a standard account. That meant one thing. A safety deposit box. Inside the bank was quiet, mid-morning, minimal foot traffic. The kind of place where nothing looks urgent even when it is. I walked up to the counter. "Hi," I said. "I need to access a safety deposit box under Harold Gordon." The teller glanced at her screen. "Are you listed on the account?" "No," I said. But I was given the key directly by him before he passed. That part always mattered. Not legally, but practically. She hesitated. "I'll need to check with our manager." "Of course." A few minutes later, a man in his 40s approached, calm, professional, measured. "I'm Daniel Reeves," he said. "Branch manager. You're here about Mr. Gordon's box." "Yes." He studied me for a second. Not suspicious, evaluating. "Do you have any documentation?" he asked. I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope Grandpa had mailed me. I hadn't opened it yet. I'd been waiting instinctively for the right moment. This felt like it. "I believe this was meant to be part of that," I said. He nodded. "Go ahead." I opened it carefully. Inside was a short letter. Handwritten. Simple. Direct. "Rosalie, if you're reading this, things didn't go the way I hoped. The key is for the box. Everything you need to understand what's been happening is inside. Don't let anyone rush you. Grandpa." I handed the letter to Mr. Reeves. He read it once, then again. "That helps," he said. "We'll still need to follow protocol, but this gives us a basis." "What kind of protocol?" I asked. "We'll verify your identity, and I'll need to be present when the box is opened," he said. "You won't be able to remove certain types of documents without proper authorization, but you can view everything." That was enough. "I'm not here to take anything," I said. "I just need to see it." He nodded. "Come with me." The hallway to the vault was narrow, quiet, controlled. A place designed to make everything feel deliberate. Inside rows of metal boxes lined the walls. He stopped at one mid-level. "Box 314, he said. He inserted his key first, turning it halfway. Then he stepped back slightly. "Whenever you're ready." I slid my key in. For a second, it didn't move. Then it clicked. The lock released. He pulled the box out and placed it on the small table beside us. "I'll give you some privacy," he said. I'll be right outside." The door closed behind him, and just like that, it was quiet. Just me and whatever Grandpa had left behind. I sat down slowly and opened the lid. Inside, everything was organized, not rushed, not hidden, prepared. The first thing I saw was a sealed envelope labeled in Grandpa's handwriting, final instructions. Underneath it, a stack of documents. I picked up the envelope first. Inside was another letter, longer this time. "Say, Rosa, what? If Marcus pushed things the way I think he might, you're going to see changes that don't reflect my intentions. I let him handle more than I should have, and that's on me. But I made sure there would still be a record." I swallowed, continuing. "The documents below include the original beneficiary designations, along with notes from my meetings with the bank and attorney. If anything has been changed under pressure, it should be clear." Pressure, he knew. "You've always understood how to read what's not being said. That's why I trusted you with this. Not because it would be easy, but because you wouldn't ignore it." My grip tightened on the page. "Whatever you decide to do, take your time. Don't let anyone make it smaller than it is." I set the letter down. Under it were copies of account records, clean, detailed, time-stamped. Original beneficiary forms. My name, not Marcus's. I flipped through them faster now. Then I saw it. A separate document. Different formatting. Different date. Recent. Beneficiary change authorization. Marcus Gordon. Signed. But the signature, I froze. It looked right at first glance. But something about it. I leaned closer. The spacing was off. The stroke pattern didn't match the older documents. It wasn't just rushed. It was inconsistent. I pulled one of the older signatures from the stack and placed them side by side. There it was, subtle but clear. The pressure points didn't align. The curve on the last letter was sharper. It wasn't just influence. It might not even be real. My chest tightened. If this was forged, then this wasn't just a family dispute anymore. I reached for the rest of the documents. There were notes from meetings, dates, times, summaries, mentions of hesitation, of repeated requests from Marcus, of delays. And at the bottom of the stack, a printed memo from the bank. WAF. Client expressed uncertainty regarding beneficiary changes. Requested additional review before finalizing. That review never happened, because 3 days later, Grandpa was gone. I sat back the pieces, locking into place faster than I could slow them down. Marcus hadn't just moved money. He'd acted before everything was finalized. Before everything was verified. Maybe before everything was even real. A soft knock came at the door. "Ms. Gordon," Mr. Reeves's voice. "Are you okay?" I looked at the documents spread out in front of me. At the signatures. At the dates. At the pattern. "Yes," I said, my voice steady again. "I am." Because now, for the first time since this started, I wasn't guessing anymore. I had proof. And not just of what Marcus did, but of what he tried to make look legitimate. I gathered the documents carefully, making sure everything stayed in order. There was one more envelope at the bottom of the box. Smaller, unmarked. I opened it. Inside was a single page. Typed. Addressed to the family, but unsigned. I scanned the first few lines. And then I stopped. Because it wasn't just instructions. It was a statement. A contingency. Written as if Grandpa expected something to go wrong. I read it again, slower this time. And by the end of it, one thing was clear. Marcus hadn't just underestimated me. He'd underestimated how far ahead Grandpa had planned. By the time I left the bank, the air outside felt sharper, like everything had edges now. Not because anything had changed. Because I finally knew what I was looking at. I didn't call Marcus. I didn't text my mom. I called Mr. Keller. "I need to meet today," I said. There was a pause on the line. "Is this about your grandfather's estate?" "Yes," I replied. "And I'm not coming alone. I have documentation you need to see." Another pause. Longer this time. "Come to my office at 2, he said. "I'll make sure everyone is available." Everyone. Good. That was exactly what I wanted. At 2 o'clock, I walked into the conference room with a folder in my hands and a clarity I hadn't had before. Marcus was already there, leaning back in his chair like he owned the space. My mother sat beside him, tense but quiet. Mr. Keller stood near the head of the table, reviewing something on his tablet. All three of them looked up when I entered. "You wanted to talk?" Marcus said, his tone calm, almost casual. "I did," I replied, taking a seat across from him. I didn't open the folder right away. Silence has a way of making people fill it, and Marcus had always hated not knowing what was coming next. "What is this about?" my mother asked. I looked at her briefly. "About making sure we're all working with the same information." Marcus smiled faintly. "We already are." "No," I said. "We're not." I slid the first document across the table. "Original beneficiary designations," I said, "dated 6 months ago." Marcus didn't touch it. Mr. Keller did. He scanned it quickly, his expression tightening just slightly. "That's outdated," Marcus said. "We updated everything before." I placed the second document down, cutting him off. "Meeting notes from the bank," I said, documenting Grandpa's hesitation about those changes. Mr. Keller picked that one up too. Now Marcus leaned forward. "You went through private records?" he asked. "They were left for me," I replied. "That doesn't make it appropriate." "What doesn't make it appropriate," I said evenly, "is moving assets before final authorization is confirmed." That landed, not loudly, but enough. Mr. Keller looked up. "Marcus, did you initiate transfers prior to finalizing the updated documents?" Marcus didn't answer right away. "It was part of the process," he said finally. "Temporary positioning." I slid another page across. "Transaction records," I said. 6-figure total. Split into multiple transfers over 3 days. My mother's eyes moved to the paper, then to Marcus. "Is that true?" she asked quietly. Marcus didn't look at her. "It's not what it looks like," he said. "It looks like unauthorized movement of funds," I replied. "That's not accurate." "Then explain it." He exhaled sharply. "I was consolidating accounts, simplifying things like I said from the beginning." "Into your name," I said. "For efficiency." "For control," I corrected. The room shifted. Subtle but real. I opened the folder again and pulled out the document I'd been waiting to use. The one that mattered most. "Beneficiary change authorization," I said, placing it in front of him. "Signed," he said immediately. "That's the authorization." "Look closer." He didn't. Not at first. But Mr. Keller did. He leaned in, studying the signature. Then he reached for the older documents I'd already provided, placing them side by side. I watched his expression change. "Marcus," he said, slowly, "when was this signed?" "The same week as the other documents," Marcus replied. "That's not what I asked," Keller said. "When exactly?" Marcus hesitated. And that was all it took. I leaned forward. "The signature doesn't match," I said. "Not in pressure, not in structure, not in consistency." "That's subjective," Marcus snapped. "It's not," I replied. "It's pattern analysis." Keller didn't say anything for a moment. Then he spoke. "This would need to be reviewed formally," he said. "Possibly by a handwriting expert." My mother's voice cut in softer now. "Marcus, did he sign this?" Marcus turned to her finally. "Yes," he said. "He did, but it didn't land the same way. Not anymore." I reached into the folder one last time. For context, I said, "There's something else." I placed the handwritten letter from Grandpa on the table. Keller picked it up carefully. He read it in silence. Then he read it again. "If anything has been changed under pressure," he repeated quietly. The room went still. My mother covered her mouth. Marcus didn't move. That's not proof of anything he said, but the certainty was gone. "No," I said. "It's not proof. It's context." I leaned back slightly. "The proof is in the sequence," I continued. "Hesitation, delayed authorization, then rapid transfers, then a finalized document that doesn't match his prior signatures." Keller set the letter down. "We need to pause all estate activity immediately," he said, "and report these discrepancies for review." Marcus stood up. "This is getting out of control," he said. "You're turning this into something it doesn't need to be." "It already is something," I replied. "You just didn't expect anyone to connect it." "This affects everyone," he shot back. You're not just exposing me, you're exposing the whole family. I held his gaze. No, I said quietly. I am exposing what you did to the family. Silence. Heavy this time, not tense. Final. Marcus looked around the room at my mother, at Keller, at the documents laid out in front of him. For the first time since this started, he didn't have control of the narrative. He didn't have the timeline. He didn't have the documents. And he didn't have a clean way out. You should have just let me fix it, he said almost under his breath. I shook my head. You should have never needed to. Keller straightened. I'll begin the formal review process, he said. Until then, no further actions will be taken regarding the estate. Marcus didn't argue. He didn't agree either. He just sat back down slowly. And in that moment, the power shifted. Not because I'd won anything yet, but because he'd lost the ability to pretend nothing was wrong. As I gathered my documents, my phone buzzed quietly in my bag. I didn't check it right away, but when I did just outside the office, the message waiting for me wasn't from Lena. It was from the bank. Subject line: Show restricted access alert. Safety deposit contents flagged for legal review. I stared at it. Then I opened the message. There was a note attached. Short, formal, free. Additional documentation has been identified within the secured assets. You may want to return. I looked back at the building behind me, at the room I'd just walked out of, and then down at the key still in my hand. Whatever Grandpa had planned, I hadn't seen all of it yet. I didn't go home. I turned the car around before I even reached the next light. Whatever the bank had found, it wasn't something they would flag lightly. And after everything I'd already seen, I wasn't willing to wait. When I walked back into the branch, Mr. Reeves was already expecting me. Ms. Gordon, he said, meeting me halfway. Thank you for coming back so quickly. What did you find? I asked. Additional documentation tied to your grandfather's box, he replied. It wasn't in the main compartment when we first opened it. It was secured in an internal sleeve, something we don't usually access unless there's a reason. A reason? Like what? A legal concern, he said carefully. That tract. Can I see it? I asked. He nodded. Come with me. The vault felt different this time. Not quieter, just heavier. Like the space itself understood what was about to come out of it. Mr. Reeves pulled the box again this time, opening a thin inner compartment along the side. From it, he removed a sealed envelope thicker than the others stamped with the bank's verification seal. This was logged, but not reviewed during the initial access, he said. Given the circumstances you described earlier, we flagged it for you. I took it from him. It had my name on it, not just Rosalie. Rosalie Gordon. To be opened if discrepancies arise. My chest tightened. He'd expected this, not hoped. Expected? I'll give you privacy, Mr. Reeves said again, stepping out. I broke the seal. Inside were 3 items. A typed affidavit, a USB drive, and a short note handwritten smaller than the others. I picked up the note first. Hurry, Rosalie. If you're here, it means things didn't stay as they should have. The documents alone may not be enough. The drive contains recordings from my last meetings. I didn't want to use them, but I wanted the option. I closed my eyes for a second. Recordings. This wasn't just documentation anymore. This was proof of intent. I picked up the affidavit next. It was notarized, dated 2 weeks before Grandpa died. Clear, structured, specific. It stated that he had felt pressured to make financial changes he did not fully agree with, that he had requested additional time and independent review, that any documents executed under those conditions should be scrutinized, and then the line that changed everything. If any party attempts to act on incomplete or disputed authorizations, I request that this statement be used to initiate formal review. He hadn't just left context. He'd created a trigger, a legal one. My hands were steady now, not because this was easy, because it was clear. I looked at the USB drive, small, unassuming, but potentially the most important piece. I stepped out of the vault and found Mr. Reeves. Is there a secure room where I can access this? I asked. He glanced at the drive, then back at me. Yes, follow me. 10 minutes later, I was sitting in a small office with a bank-issued laptop in front of me. The drive clicked into place. A single folder opened. 3 files, all audio, dated, labeled. I clicked the first one. At first it was just background noise, papers moving, a chair shifting. Then Marcus's voice. "It's just paperwork, Grandpa. We've already talked about this." Grandpa responded slower than I remembered, but clear. I said I wanted Rosalie to review it. A pause. "You don't need her for this," Marcus said. "She'll slow everything down." Another pause. "That's the point," Grandpa replied. I felt something in my chest tighten. The recording continued. Marcus's tone changed, subtle but sharper. "If we don't handle this now, things get complicated. Taxes, delays, legal costs. You said you didn't want that." "I don't," Grandpa said. "But I don't want to sign something I don't fully understand either." Silence. Then Marcus again. "You trust me, right?" It wasn't a question. It was leverage. The file ended. I didn't move for a few seconds. Then I clicked the second recording. This one was shorter, more direct. "I just need your signature here," Marcus said. And Rosalie, Grandpa asked. "We'll show her after," Marcus replied. A pause. Longer this time. "I don't like that," Grandpa said. "You don't have to like it," Marcus answered. "You just have to sign." The audio cut. I sat back slowly. That wasn't guidance. That wasn't help. That was pressure. Clear, documented, undeniable. I opened the third file. This one started mid-conversation. "I want to wait," Grandpa was saying. "We don't have time," Marcus replied. "There's always time to do it right. And there's also a cost to waiting," Marcus said. "You taught me that." Another pause. Then softer. "I don't want conflict," Grandpa said. "You won't have any," Marcus replied. "I'll handle everything." That line again. I closed the file. The room felt smaller now, not because of the space, because the truth had nowhere left to hide. Marcus hadn't just acted early. He'd built pressure. He'd created urgency. He'd moved before review, and then he'd taken control of the outcome. I removed the drive carefully and stepped back out into the hallway. Mr. Reeves looked up. "Did you find what you needed?" he asked. I nodded once. "Yes." Because this wasn't a question anymore. It wasn't interpretation. It wasn't suspicion. It was sequence, intent, action, proof. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. I let it ring once, twice. Then I answered. "Rosalie," she said, her voice tight, uncertain. "Marcus. He's being contacted by someone about the accounts. He says you started something." I closed my eyes briefly. "I didn't start it," I said. "I just didn't ignore it." "Can we talk?" she asked. I looked down at the drive in my hand. At the key. At everything Grandpa had left behind, not to create a fight, but to prevent one from being buried. "We can talk," I said. "But it's not going to be the same conversation anymore." There was a pause on the line. "What does that mean?" she asked. I opened my eyes. "It means this isn't about fixing things quietly," I said. "It's about facing what actually happened." I ended the call before she could respond, because for the first time since this started, I wasn't being pulled into their version of events. They were being pulled into the truth. By the time everything moved into formal review, it stopped feeling like a family conflict. It became a process, structured, documented. Slow in the way real accountability always is. Mr. Keller coordinated with the bank. The affidavit triggered an internal escalation. The recordings, once verified, shifted the tone completely. What Marcus had framed as temporary management now had context. Pressure, timing, control. The transfers were frozen first, then traced. Every movement Marcus made, every account he touched was reconstructed through timestamps and confirmations. It wasn't dramatic. No one stormed into a room. No one raised their voice. But the narrative changed. And once it did, it didn't go back. Marcus tried to hold on to it at first. He framed it as a misunderstanding, said he'd acted in good faith, that Grandpa had agreed, just not in a way that looked clean on paper. But the more the documents were reviewed, the less that argument held. Because good faith doesn't require urgency, and it doesn't avoid transparency, the beneficiary change was flagged. Not just questionable invalid pending verification, the signature discrepancy moved from subjective to formally disputed. And the recordings? Those didn't leave much room for interpretation. He hadn't forced anything outright, but he'd shaped the moment, created pressure, pushed timing. That was enough. The final outcome didn't happen all at once. It unfolded. Marcus lost control of the accounts first, then access, then credibility. There were consequences, legal and financial, but they weren't explosive. They were precise, measured. The kind that stay on record long after people stop talking about them. My mother didn't take it well. Not at first. She called me more than once asking if there was a way to resolve things privately. I understood what she meant. Keep it inside the family. Protect the image. Minimize the damage. But that version of resolution had already been offered. Marcus had offered it in that study, standing a few feet away from me, asking me to let him fix it. What he meant was, let me control how this ends. I didn't. And now there wasn't a version of this that stayed quiet without erasing what actually happened. It's not about punishing him, I told her once. It's about not pretending it didn't happen. She didn't argue, but she didn't agree either. That was the hardest part. Not the investigation, not the confrontation, the distance. Because once you see something clearly, you can't go back to seeing it the way you used to. A few months later, the estate settled. Not perfectly, but correctly. The original beneficiary designations were reinstated based on the documentation Grandpa left behind. The assets were redistributed according to his actual intentions, not the version created in those last few days. Mr. Keller stayed involved through the entire process, careful, thorough, quietly firm in the way that matters. And the house, I didn't move into it. I didn't sell it right away either. I kept it the way it was for a while. Not because I didn't know what to do with it, because I needed time to separate what it had been from what it had become. Marcus and I didn't speak. Not after the final review. There was no dramatic fallout, no final argument, just silence. Intentional, clean. My mother reached out occasionally, carefully, like someone testing a door they weren't sure would open. I responded, but on my terms. Short conversations, clear boundaries, no rewriting of what happened, no pretending we were back where we used to be, because we weren't. And that was okay. The last thing I did before closing out Grandpa's accounts was go back to the bank one more time. Not because I needed to, because I wanted to return the key. Mr. Reeves met me again. Everything resolved, he asked. Yes, I said. I placed the key on the desk between us. He looked at it for a second, then back at me. Your grandfather planned carefully, he said. He did, I replied. Not just financially, he added. I nodded, because that was the part people miss. This wasn't about money, not really. It was about trust, about what happens when someone uses it as leverage instead of responsibility. Grandpa didn't stop that from happening, but he made sure it wouldn't stay hidden. I kept the letters, all of them, not as evidence anymore, as reminders of how quickly things can shift, of how quietly pressure can be applied, and of how important it is to recognize the difference between helping and controlling. When I locked the house for the last time that season, I didn't feel like I was closing something. I felt like I was setting it down. Not forgetting, not forgiving everything, just not carrying it the same way. Because understanding something doesn't erase it, but it does change what it weighs. Some betrayals don't come from strangers. They come wrapped in familiarity, spoken in calm voices, justified with words like family efficiency or what's best for everyone. And that's what makes them harder to recognize. What I learned is that boundaries aren't acts of rejection, they're acts of clarity. You can care about someone and still refuse to participate in something that harms you or others. And choosing not to stay silent isn't revenge, it's responsibility. Justice, at least the kind that lasts, isn't loud. It's patient. It's documented. It's built on truth that holds up even when emotions settle. If you've ever been put in a position where speaking up meant disrupting the image of your own family, you know how heavy that choice is. And if you chose honesty anyway, that matters more than you think. Forgiveness, if it comes, doesn't mean restoring access. It doesn't mean forgetting patterns or ignoring what you've learned. Sometimes it just means you stop expecting something different from people who've shown you who they are. If this story resonated with you, I'd really like to hear your perspective. Where are you watching from and what time is it there right now? And if you've ever had to choose between keeping peace and telling the truth, what did you decide? This is a fictional story created for entertainment, education, and reflection. If you want more stories like this, realistic, grounded, and honest, consider subscribing